Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to be talking about this month is
April Donate Life Month. This month is April, a time to talk about some kidney transplant stories, and that's what we're doing today. Since it is, I know it's almost the end of Donate Life Month, and it may be a little late, but we are talking about some stories and trying to help people find donors, and try to talk about people who have already had kidney transplants or still looking for donors. And today we have a special guest with us today. We have a special guest with us today. This is Isiah from Russellville, Arkansas. So, Isiah, can you tell us a little bit about your story, your kidney story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Isiah Gadberry. I'm from Arkansas, and I am 24 years old. I was born, me and my twin sister were born premature by months, and we both came out healthy at first, but after a little bit of testing, they found that my kidneys were just a little underdeveloped, and I think by the time I was 3 years old, they had to send us to Dallas, Texas Children's Hospital, so we doing further testing, and it just kind of progressed from there. We met a doctor because they that I was going to be coming in a lot more regular for thing and medications and different things. So they assigned us a doctor in Arkansas who, she said, my mom has always explained it as this doctor took one look at me and said, we're going to need you here a lot. And just kind of from there, everything started progressing at a very quick pace. I was put on dialysis for the first time at 3 years old. Yeah. My mom trained. She helped my twin sister learn how to mess with some of the things, for the alarms that go off in the middle of the night. And I was on dialysis for the next few years until let's see. I just got that wrong. I was put on dialysis at 5 years old, not 3. My bad. I started on 3 years old.
Yeah.
I was on dialysis from the age of 5 to 8 years old. That was when I got my first transplant. So, I got my first transplant back in, when I was 8 years old, 2010. And everything was pretty good for the first few years. It wasn't until I was maybe 12 years old that it started to enter rejection, and it progressed until I was 14. I'd gotten really sick. I got some kind of uncommon infection, some weird strain of bird flu is what we had come to find. Yeah. But I was in the hospital for almost a month at that point, and they had a bunch of people coming in to see me, people from other hospitals around the state coming in because they had never seen anything like what I had going on.
Wow.
And at that point, they knew that my kidney wasn't working anymore, so I was put back on dialysis. At this point, I was 14 years old. They trained me how to do everything myself, and that was when everything really started to change for me, because that was, I think that was kind of the wake-up call for me, very, very serious stuff. So I started peritoneal dialysis again when I was 14. From there, I did public school for a little bit, but my mom learned it was best to keep me homeschooled because of the compromised immune system.
Right, I totally understand that. I'm homeschooled too. I don't go to wheel school. My sister goes to school, wheel school, and my brother did too when he was younger. But I've never been to a public school. I've always been homeschooled, so because of Jones and whatnot. So I completely understand that.
That's how it was for me. So my sister was in school a lot more than me. but every time I was in public school, I would catch something or get really sick, and it's always best for me to be home.
Yeah.
But, so, for the past almost 10 years now, this year will actually make 10 years that I've been on peritoneal dialysis. I have done hemo and center dialysis a few times throughout these years. I've just always preferred peritoneal dialysis, and I actually like to consider myself an advocate for peritoneal dialysis because how much it's changed my life and the impact it's had on me. A little bit of difference between peritoneal dialysis and hemodialysis, for those who don't know, is hemo is going in 3 times a week for a few hours and you're clean through the blood, where peritoneal dialysis is doing it at home throughout the night. While it's always been a lot easier on me. It's very simple. You know, it's been my life for a long time, and it's just kind of become a routine that I'm comfortable in. Where with hemodialysis, it's a lot more exhausting, and it was very.
Yeah. You never get comfortable with that, do you?
No.
It was very mentally draining for me, and it was the start of a lot of the depression that I dealt with throughout the years.
So Isiah, let me ask you this: are you on PD now, or are you on hemodialysis?
I'm on peritoneal dialysis right now, and that actually leads into another story that happened here recently. So, like I said, I've been on hemo a few times throughout the years, and my most recent time was just last year. I had to go into the hospital at one point because I had some kind of infection that I was dealing with a lot of pain at home, and I went to the hospital. They admitted me, did a bunch of testing, and found that I needed to get my gallbladder removed. We originally thought it was something wrong with my, we thought it was some kind of urinary tract infection.
Right.
They needed to remove my gallbladder, but the doctors and surgeons had concerns about my peritoneal catheter that I had. So they actually wanted to take out the catheter at that point along with the gallbladder. That's what they had to do. And I had to switch back to in-center dialysis for a few months. And it was from November until about February, I believe, February or March, when I just got my catheter back a few months ago. And I have now been on peritoneal dialysis again for about 2 months.
Yeah. Just to tell you a little bit about Lincoln's history with peritoneal dialysis, well, with both. When he was first diagnosed with kidney failure, they went ahead and put him in a peritoneal catheter, and of course put in a hemo port as well at the same time, because they had to give him hemo
until my PD catheter
until
could
the
heal.
PD catheter healed. And so he started peritoneal, but after about several months on peritoneal dialysis, it was not working very well. For one thing, it wasn't removing enough fluid, and then the other thing was Lincoln got pancreatitis, and he was in a lot of pain and had a lot of problems as a result of pancreatitis. About half of his pancreas actually wound up dying, and they had to remove it.
And I developed diabetes from that.
Yeah, so now he has diabetes as a result. So the peritoneal did not work out for him. Something to do with his peritoneum. It just was not working very well at filtering.
Hemodialysis was honestly, I think, better for me than PD was since that happened. And PD dialysis for me, I know it's all different for different types of people, but PD dialysis was very uncomfortable for me, and it was not.
It can be hardest at first when you're first switching and learning, how it really works, and especially all those different feelings. Like, I remember when I first started back all those years ago, when I was 14, the big adjustment for me was getting used to that drain pain that you deal with at first, especially with all the scar tissue and stuff you deal with, your peritoneum and your abdomen. And your grandpa mentioned you had pancreatitis. That is actually found a few months back, and what led them to remove my gallbladder. So they had to take my parents.
Do you have diabetes or no?
No, not currently.
Okay.
That's great. That's a blessing.
Good, yeah, because diabetes it has its moments, but it's rough on me sometimes.
But a big thing for me that I like to be open and honest about with everyone I speak to, my doctors included, is growing up, especially being a child, with disability. It's hard to really grasp the seriousness of your situation, especially when you're not around a bunch of other children. So growing up, I didn't always understand the importance of taking my medication and eating the right foods, especially switching to the renal diet. So I had a lot of trouble when I was younger following my prescription and what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
When I turned 18, I'd gotten really sick. This was in 2020 when COVID first hit us really hard. And I caught one of the first strands living with my uncle.
That's what gave me kidney disease. That's what gave me kidney disease.
Yeah.
I caught COVID too in 2020 and
2022,
I'm sorry, 2022, and I have a gene mutation which did not allow my kidneys to develop properly. And with that being said, COVID kind of just shut them down. And I had to get on dialysis and be in the hospital. So I don't even know how long.
We had a terrible situation too, Isiah. Lincoln, we live about 225 miles from Atlanta. And the only place in the state of Georgia that does children hemodialysis
is in Atlanta.
Is in the Atlanta area. So we had to drive 3 days a week up to Atlanta to do hemodialysis for months on end. We at first started trying to stay up there for a while, but then we just figured out we'd all rather be at home in our own bed at night, and it was just easier and cheaper and easier to drive back and forth. So we just started driving back and forth 3 days a week.
But Isiah, one question I wanted to ask you. I know you've told me this several times and stuff off camera, but like, you're looking for a kidney donor. How's that process going for you? Like, can you explain that a little bit for me?
So yeah, well, let's see. I've been on the transplant list since I was 21 years old. I have been searching for a donor since then. My mom was actually the first person to test for me. My family is rather small, so I do have a twin sister, a brother, and then my mom. I have a few aunts and uncles around, but that's about it. Everyone else in my family either lives out of state or is passed on. So, being on the list for as long as I have, my mom wanted to test first, and she was a perfect match other than them finding an extra vein and artery on her kidney.
That same thing happened with my donor too, with my Aunt Erin. The first time I tried to get, the first time when my aunt donated to me, we had that same issue to start with too.
They called it an unattractive organ, they have. So, I got my first kidney offer because, okay, so for one, my blood type is A positive, so I have a fairly common blood type. Wow. The only thing that makes it hard for me to find a donor is my high antibodies from the first kidney rejection I had. my first kidney transplant that I had and the rejection I dealt with back then. So, even though I have a common blood type and all these years on dialysis has placed me at the top of the list, it is hard to find a perfect match because of those antibodies that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one good thing to mention is that we did just learn from my doctor that they are working on getting a medication approved that can lower antibodies and increase chances of more kidneys working.
Yeah.
So that's something we're just waiting for. But my first kidney offer was back in, I think, just about 6 months after I got listed. I met a man there. He ended up getting the kidney that time. That's a long story in itself. But something about that kidney wouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I got my second call exactly a year after that first call, like to the day, a year later.
Yeah.
And that turned out that woman was actually taken off of life support, and that was why they were calling people in just in case. But the woman ended up surviving. So, that was, God bless her and her family.
Wow.
I actually, after that, I got online and started posting again about my need for a donor. And that same day, I met a man named Kent Bressler through Kidney Solutions Network. They run a website and community for helping people find donors. That's actually what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing their brand.
Right.
So they help people find donors. I've been on their website for about 2, maybe 3 years now. I have made a ad for them before, a commercial for them before, kind of telling my story and the importance of finding a donor. So I've been searching for a donor since being listed, just posting and sharing my story. I was doing it on a few different platforms for the longest time, and I've had quite a few people reach out wanting to help me. The most common thing that I've run into is most of the people I've spoken with have needed to lose a little bit of weight before being eligible to actually proceed with testing.
Yeah.
And other than that, I've dealt with a lot of scammers too. So I've only had a few serious people that I've wanted. And it's been difficult to find a donor, especially in my area, because I live in a rather small town. And it's like no one in my family is eligible to test. And it's actually another important thing to bring up is my twin sister would be the most likely, perfect match for me.
Has she gotten tested to be your donor or tried to be?
She would have, but the sad thing is her son was actually born the same exact way I was.
That's right. That's your nephew, right?
My nephew, he was born with kidney disease as well. He is doing really good now. Both of his kidneys are growing good, but he is on medication and has to go to the doctor every few months, just like I did as a kid.
Yeah.
So she is saving her kidney just in case he needs it someday.
Right.
Which is
right.
No, it's him being born that same way is kind of what led us to thinking this could be some kind of genetic thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That. Well, if you have that too, and then he gets it, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Lincoln's genetic thing. They tested him a lot when he was young, and they couldn't really find anything. But something happened. There was a study in 2017, and they discovered some new mutation. And so finally, when they got around, when he was in the hospital in the early in 22 and 23, they did more testing and then found that he had that mutation that had just been studied and discovered in 2017. So that was Lincoln's story. But one other thing you mentioned earlier, I wanted to kind of emphasize. You mentioned having to manage your medications and everything, and it's really a lot. And when we were going through the pre-transplant stuff, we asked a lot of questions, and I asked the question of the doctors, why most kids, they were saying that most children that get a new kidney, it only lasts about 5 years. It's kind of the average. And I said, why? I hear of adults that, they last 20 and 30 years. Why do so many children lose them at just 5 years? And the answer was that they're not diligent about taking their anti-rejection meds, and when you turn 18, you kind of think, oh, I'm independent and I'm invincible and I don't have to worry so much about that, but that's not the case if you're a kidney transplant recipient. You've got to be very diligent about
and very careful with that kind of stuff.
Very careful about taking those meds.
That's what leads into the story I was actually telling earlier. When I turned 18 and got really sick from that first strand of COVID, I went to a local hospital here where I live. They couldn't do anything for me because I live in a very small town. So they sent us to another hospital. Same thing. They found another issue I had going on that they thought was causing what I had, but it was actually it wasn't what I had going on. I ended up seizing out and losing consciousness in that hospital I was at, and the only hospital in the state here that would take me, even though I was 18, was Children's Hospital, because they knew me and they had my medical records.
Right.
So I there, and my old doctor was taking care of me, and to this day I don't remember anything from that time because I had what's called press on the brain. My dialysis stopped working from COVID hitting me, and I had about 15 liters of fluid built up in my body, and a lot of it. So I had press on the brain, which caused me to lose some of that time back then. When I woke up in that hospital, that was the point I knew I had to change my life. Yeah. So I started doing everything in my power to take my medications, be responsible with following my diet, my fluid limit, doing the dialysis as prescribed, really learning about my disability and my responsibilities as an individual with kidney disease. And that was really what I call the start of my journey when I was 18, because from that point on it has been nothing but progress and growth. And that was what led me to getting active on the list. Because I remember being 16 years old trying to get activated on the transplant list again at Children's Hospital, and they told us we weren't ready, and that was purely because I wasn't ready. I wouldn't have been able to keep that kidney, and hearing, what you said about children's kidneys not lasting longer due to the medication, that makes perfect sense, because those were issues I dealt with myself as a child, and it was just these past maybe 8 years now that I really started getting serious about my health and doing everything I can to keep myself in the best place I can be.
Yeah.
That's,
thankfully Lincoln has a large family and a large network of support that really and he is very diligent about taking his meds, him and his mom and all of us.
Yeah, and since I'm only 16 years old at this moment, my mom helps me with a lot of my medical things. And, so my grandparents do too, my grandpa and my grandmother and all that. And
that's good to have a support system behind you.
It is, yeah. And I'm sorry that you don't have more help.
Yeah.
I have a small family, my mom and my siblings, but really chose to take on a lot of the things myself. And when I did turn 18 and got really sick, and that was when everything kind of hit me that I had to make a change in my life from there.
Right.
I knew it was up to me to change my life, because even with the support I had behind me, that support didn't make a difference if I wasn't taking it to heart and, doing my part.
Right.
Okay.
When I actually started doing everything I needed to and bettering myself, it was definitely a big wake-up call, I'd say, just like I said.
Yeah. Well, Isiah, we're kind of running out of time on this podcast, so we're probably going to wrap it up right here, but I sure do hope that you get a kidney soon, and we are all rooting for you and hoping that you find a kidney sometime soon, and hope that you have no further issues with your stuff, and wish you good luck, and keep on going,
And for our viewers, if any
you'll get it one day. You'll get there.
If any of our viewers would like to check into donating,
Where can we find that, Isiah?
get in touch with me and Lincoln, and we'll figure it out. We'll let you know who to see.
We'll get you through to Isiah and try to help get you tested for him.
There's a few ways that you could get in contact with me, but the main one is probably going to kidneysolutions.org, where you can actually go and be tested immediately, just through a quick online survey. You just get a little bit of information like your blood type and stuff like that, and they determine right there if you're eligible and worth testing. So kidneysolutions.org is the best place to start for me, but other than that, just reaching out to me or Lincoln for the information that you can get.
Another thing that's important to understand too is they have an exchange program where even if you wanted to say donate to Isiah and you're not a match, there might be somebody else that's been tested that would be a match for him, and you could donate to that other person. So they have an exchange network to make that work. So if you're interested in being a donor, I know it's a huge sacrifice, but it's also,
it saves a lot of lives.
Saves a lot of
and
lives.
It makes a lot of people. It gives people more life to live, more, so that they can continue to having memories with their friends and family, and keep on, growing up and doing things in their life. And
see, and something I've heard is that from people who have donated is that it can really give them a new perspective on life once they help someone that way. It can really be a huge eye-opener. And another thing I've heard is that most people do just fine with one kidney.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Lincoln's donor has been great. She's not had any issues.
So
I just pray every day that God sends a kidney my way whenever the time is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
again, well,
Isiah.
thank you, Isiah,
Thank
for
you.
joining our podcast today. And go ahead and cut it off.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you allowing me to be a part of it.